Good morning, friends. So we've been talking a lot about doing donations for charity. And even when we prayed our Franciscan crown, we were contemplating the needs of others through the mysteries of the life of Christ, right? The joys of Mary. And I don't want to mislead you folks into thinking that social action is the only way to help your neighbor. You need a balanced approach. And here's what I'm trying to say, okay? So okay, everybody's been talking about the woolly bear caterpillars, right? They're these cute little caterpillars, probably about that big. They're brown and black, and everybody's freaking out because there's all these black ones, and they're saying there's going to be a horrible winter. There's nothing we can do. Oh my gosh, like we should just all get up and move. We have to do something drastic because I can't stand this horrible winter another year. I just can't do it, right? Here's the thing. That's not even real. The little brown and black caterpillars, science has kind of sort of proven maybe they can predict the weather by the size of their bands, how big their brown stripe is compared to their black stripes. But here's the thing, the all white ones or creamy colored ones are not the same species. The all black ones are not the same species. The moths look nothing alike. I know the caterpillars look really similar. And if you look at those solid black ones, you can kind of see little bits of red in their skin in between. So you're like, oh, so those are skinny brown stripes. They're not. It's a different caterpillar. Look it up. One is called the banded woolly bear, the guy with two colors, really. And the guy that's mostly black, except for these tiny little bits of skin you can see, he's called, I believe it's the giant leopard moth. The moths look so completely different. You will not mistake them again. But we make that mistake, right? So sometimes we think the only way to help man is really to help him in this life, and that's all we need to do. Let him have his own religion, let him have his own practices, it's all the same. And that comes from an era from a long time ago. So you've probably all heard of Aquinas. Aquinas believed that man's nature was twofold, okay? So we have a natural end and a supernatural end, and they're hinged together. They cannot be separated anymore. They're fused together, right? So man is not just an animal anymore. We've got this. Animals don't have that. And it allows us to use our will to bring us closer to God. And we need grace in order to really make the supernatural one function, right? Everybody can live and die, just like animals. We got that down, right? But if we want to have the supernatural life, we need graces to make this side work. And they work together. Now, there was a guy named de Lubac, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who believed we only had one end. Everything was grace. It was all good. That primitive man, even from the beginning, babies from the instant they're born, they all long to see the beauty of God. But like Dr. Taylor Marshall said the other day, that's not really true. So take the analogy of a baby, right? My nephew, God bless him, little Tommy, he had a terminal illness as a baby. And I remember the day when somebody was like, he used a feeding tube. So he never even got to taste really what milk tastes like. I think he got to take the bottle once or something. He just couldn't suckle. So he had a feeding tube. He never got to taste anything. And so one day somebody was like, give him a lick of a lollipop, right? And his little eyes lit up. Oh, that was just the best thing ever. There's a video of it. It's the most adorable thing ever. And so from then on, he craved lollipops. Did he crave lollipops before then? He didn't know what they were. But you could see him sometimes like, yeah, he remember that lollipop. And that's the way it is with most babies with milk. They've never had milk before, right? Before they were born, that's not how they were nurtured. And once they get milk, ooh, that's the good stuff, right? And we're like that. We're like that. God, right? The church nurses us. The whole symbolism's there, right? The symbolism part. So we are baptized in the water. It's like being reborn. And then the church nurtures us with her milk. And that's not just with education about God, but it is. We also get nursed basically through the sacraments, right? We need those sacraments. So de Lubac, with his saying that we only have one end, all is grace. So that's kind of like saying religions are all the same. You don't need the sacraments. Everything is grace. Everything you do is grace. That's all you need. And so from that, we kind of fell into this liberation theology that's going on right now, right? And liberation theology is kind of like empower the poor people go be with them in solidarity, right? Go live with them. And a lot of people look to St. Francis for this. And he did go and live with the lepers, but it's not like he just hung out and played cards with them, right? I'm sure he probably worked on some of their medical needs. People quote Mother Teresa for this. Mother Teresa did meet the poor where they were, but she also, I mean, she kept opening schools and things too, right? So she didn't just leave the people. I think her brothers run schools now. She didn't just leave the poor people poor, be like, you're poor, that's cool, whatevs. And she didn't even just the poor people who were dying. She didn't just be like, okay, you can come die here, that's cool. No! I mean, they tell them about Jesus as well as making them comfortable if they're dying, if there's nothing they can do, right? So we have two ends and we have two purposes. So donating in charity is awesome, right? Awesome. People need things, and that's great. But you can't just leave people where they are, and you can't just expect them to start a revolution. A lot of people look to Moses for this. They're like, it's let my people free. But that's not the whole story, right? Remember how the people had gotten themselves into Egypt, right? There was that big famine coming, right? And these brothers sold their brother into slavery to the Egyptians, right? They sold Joseph into slavery, and they told their father he was dead, and Joseph was raised up came up in the court, right? He worked his way up through hard labor and good, honest labor. And when his brother needed help, they came to Egypt. You can read the story. You guys know the story, right? And so that's how the people came to settle in Egypt. Well, eventually they became sort of a second-class citizen, right? They weren't considered as good as the Egyptians. And so when Moses came, but remember what God sent Moses to do. God sent Moses to set the people free so that they could worship him, right? And so the people are in the desert, then Moses has them out, right? We've got that part. And they're wandering around the desert, and God is giving them the bread of angels, right? And he's giving them water from the rock. He's giving them guidance through the desert. They're protected. The whole snake thing goes on. God heals them. And it's never enough for the people. Their material needs. They just keep wanting more and more and more for the material needs. And when God doesn't provide for their extra material needs, right? He's going to try and teach them the law again. Teach them so that they can worship him and understand and be in communion with him. And they're like, nah, I'm not going to wait for that. I want the God that promised me riches and wealth like the Egyptians. We're going to make our own God. And they literally do. And we do that. So you need to be careful. Yes, you want to help the poor. Sparking a revolution, is that really helping the poor? How many of them are going to die in this revolution? That may not be the way. Is that trusting and clinging to God? Is that spiritual poverty, or are we just addressing poverty? So we need spiritual poverty, right? Preference for the poor doesn't mean we take a tribe, right? A native tribe somewhere and basically put them in a zoo and say, no, you can't join the modern world. You can't have development. We want you to be the noble savage and teach us your ways. It's like putting them in a zoo. It's ridiculous. I know this is a kind of a crazy rant for some of you, but totally needs to be said, right? That's not cool. They don't get special rules. They're being treated right now. If you look at the film of Rome, it's like they're being treated like some kind of animal. Oh, you can wear everybody else has a dress code for going to the Vatican to honor God, right? And no, you can wear whatever you want. Come in your sweats, whatever. It's no big deal. It is a big deal. That's the house of God. They're turning their back to the tabernacle to do these other weird ceremonies. And you're thinking, what does this have to do with me? Maybe you're not Catholic. Here's the thing. This is what's happening across the board in society. It's secularization. It's relativization. And why this is coming into our Christmas episode is a lot of people get depressed in the holidays. And I really wanted to kind of address this. So I started out just reading this book, After Suicide. It's by Father Chris Alar and by Jason Lewis. They're both Marian fathers. And the subtitle is There's Hope for Them and You. So part of what I want to talk about today is there's hope for them. And research has shown that people who attend religious services at least once a week, they have a little bit of a buffer zone against suicide. And you're going to get depressed, because if you think life is only material needs, there's no afterlife, that is depressing. If you're not relying on God for your needs, if you're just thinking about your material needs, it's never going to be enough. We're human. We have that fault in us. It's never enough, the material needs, right? And we always want more. And we get focused on the world that way. And we turn into ourselves and we forget about our neighbors sometimes. Or some people focus so much on their neighbors that they've forgotten about God. And we talked about that before with the book, The Soul of the Apostolate, how you need to keep refreshing yourself. Love of God and love of neighbor, they're not equal. They are both the two most important commandments. But what's the most important commandment is love God. And if you love God and you adore him and you go to church and you get his sacraments, right, friends? That well in love is going to fill up in you and out of you and spill out to your neighbor. That is the way love of your neighbor comes in. Now, if you're just doing giving love of your neighbor without going back to God, it's not the same. It's like the repetitious prayer that Jesus warns us about, rote prayer, where it's just the mumblings. Your good deeds can actually become that way. You're just giving to the poor because it's a habit. Because that's what you do. And I've known people who like give things their families have been using, right? Things their families need, and they give it away to others, and then their families have nothing. I've heard of that too. You need to be going to God, right? And refreshing your soul. Because some people give, right? And especially around the holidays, this can happen. You're giving to your friends and your neighbors, and you're left with this incredible sadness. Because you are empty. You have given everything and not refilled the well, and you're empty. But there is hope. There is God, and he loves you 24/7 your entire life. And you can turn to him and rely on him, but you need to make time for him, right? It's a relationship. You have to work on it. If you're in love with someone, you will spend time with them, right, friends? So you need to be spending time with God. And not just praying every day as you do everything. That's wonderful, but that should be an outflow. That should be an outflow of God indwelling in you. You need the whole thing. You need all of it, right? When you get that hinge and it opens up, you can fill it with graces from God. And then it kind of spills out to others. So friends, I want to encourage you this time of year. We're going to cover more in the book, but I want you to know that a lot of the causes of suicide have to do with hopelessness. God is hope. God is love. So it has to do with hopelessness, and some of it can be depression or mental illness or sudden tragic event. But if you have a strong faith, you're going to church every week, and you have the community of the church, it is a buffer. It's an extra layer of protection, right, against suicide. And that has been found in scientific studies. They're not just by religion. If you want all the details, absolutely read the book or search the web. It's been found to be true. Meditation, that is like yoga and other forms of Eastern meditation. I don't think it's the same. It's I don't know that it has the same effect. That's not covered in here. If you have that question, we can look that up. Put it in the comments if you have that question. But a lot of that is really turning into yourself, a lot of the Eastern religions, and making yourself better. So that's not the same as filling yourself with God. Emptying yourself is not the same as filling yourself with God. It's not. It's not the same. One is literally emptying yourself, and one is filling yourself with God. They are actually completely different things. We're running out of time. Don't worry, we're going to talk about this more tomorrow as to what we can do if we can help people who've already committed suicide, as well as if you are feeling any in danger of suicide. Right here we have the number. It's just 1-800-SUICIDE, SUICIDE. Or you can dial 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-TALK. There are understanding professionals on the other end of the line if you need to talk to someone about suicide. God bless you, friends.